The billion-dollar blow. Welcome to the channel. If you believe that karma is the most powerful business plan, hit that subscribe button right now. Today we're asking, what happens when a man throws away a diamond, convinced he's trading it for a newer, shinier stone? Elias Vance thought he had it all. A multi-billion-dollar corporation, a beautiful, high society wife, and a dazzling new model draped over his arm. He decided he no longer needed his wife, Serafina Thorne. He discarded her with cold, careless cruelty, laughing all the way to his supposed new dream life. But Elias overlooked one crucial detail. He didn't know that his wife, Serafina, was the only person his powerful dying father, Alexander Thorne, had ever truly trusted. And he didn't know that Alexander was about to make a definitive move from beyond the grave, turning Elias's new life into a financial and social nightmare. You are about to witness the most ruthless, satisfying corporate revenge in modern history. Like this video and comment below. Is money the greatest weapon, or is knowledge the true power? Chapter 1. The cold reflection of ego. The penthouse in the exclusive Upper East Side of Manhattan was less a home and more a museum to Elias Vance's ego. Every surface was cold, reflective marble or polished glass, populated by sterile, modern furniture that cost a fortune but offered zero comfort. It was the perfect reflection of the marriage it housed. Serafina Thorne moved through the rooms with a quiet grace that, over the years, had morphed into invisibility. Elias rarely looked at her anymore, his gaze perpetually fixed on the luminous screen of his custom mobile phone, a device that commanded more attention and affection than she had ever received. Tonight was no different. Elias stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, the lights of Manhattan glittering below like a fallen tapestry of stars. He was a handsome man, sculpted by expensive personal trainers and bespoke tailoring. But a perpetual, petulant scowl of annoyance was etched onto his face. He was texting, a small, satisfied smirk playing on his lips. "You'll be late for the charity gala, Elias," Serafina said, her voice soft. She wore a simple, elegant navy evening gown, her only jewelry, a pair of discreet pearl earrings her father-in-law, Alexander, had gifted her years ago. "I'm not going," Elias replied, not looking up. "Something's come up. A sudden meeting with investors. You go. Make the donation, show face. That's what you're good for." Serafina felt the familiar, dull ache of his contempt. "Elias, your father will be there. He's making an appearance, and he specifically asked you to come." This made Elias finally look up, his eyes cold. "My father? He'll have to understand I'm busy running the company he's supposed to let me lead. The Boston deal is worth 9 figures. His little rubber chicken dinner can wait." He adjusted the cuffs of his Swiss timepiece, a gift to himself. Serafina knew he was lying. There was no urgent business. The scent on his suit jacket when he came home to change wasn't the sterile air of the Thorne global boardroom, but the heavy, sweet aroma of a niche perfume, one worn by women half his age. It was the fragrance of Anya Petrova, the new face of the disastrous fashion line Elias had insisted on launching. "As you wish," Serafina said, turning away. "I'll offer your apologies." "Don't," he snapped. "Just tell him I'm busy. He respects work." Serafina didn't reply. She knew Alexander Thorne respected work, but not vanity. And Elias's recent work was pure vanity. She took the chauffeured Rolls-Royce alone down to the financial district event. In the crystal-filled ballroom, overflowing with old money, she found Alexander Thorne, the patriarch, looking frail at the main table. Now confined to a wheelchair, he was a gruff man with perceptive eyes, whose illness had only sharpened his perception. "He's not coming," Alexander grumbled, waving away a waiter. It wasn't a question. "A last-minute crisis with the Boston investors," Serafina said, the lie tasting like ash. Alexander gave a dry, humorless laugh. Boston? Is that what she's called now? Last week it was the Miami expansion. He motioned for Serafina to sit. He's a fool, Serafina, and he thinks I'm an even bigger fool. Serafina sat, her hands clasped in her lap. He's just distracted, Alexander. The new fashion line. The disaster, Anya, by Vance, Alexander scoffed. It's bleeding money. He's leveraging our commercial real estate assets to fund handbags. He's a child playing with billion-dollar blocks. And you're allowing it? It's not my place, Alexander. The hell it isn't, he roared, drawing a few glances. You're the only one in that house with a damn brain. You're the one who reads the quarterly reports. The one who catches the accounting errors. I know you do. Helena tells me. Helena was his lifelong executive secretary. Serafina looked down. I try to advise him. Stop advising. Start acting. His voice softened. His hand, thin and parchment-like, found hers. You are a good woman, Serafina. Too good for him. You remind me of his mother. Loyal, intelligent, and completely underestimated. Don't let that fool destroy what my father and I built. The rest of the night was a blur of polite smiles and empty chatter. When Serafina returned to the penthouse at midnight, it was empty. Elias didn't return at 1 or 2. He finally stumbled in at 3:15 a.m., his suit jacket slung over his shoulder, his tie missing. The scent of expensive perfume and champagne clung to him like a second skin. He didn't look guilty. He looked energized. Serafina, he said, flicking on the salon light. You're awake. Good. We need to talk. Serafina, who had been sitting in the dark, felt her stomach clench. The moment had arrived. I'm leaving you, he said, with the same casualness one would announce changing dry cleaners. I'm in love with Anya Petrova. We're going to be together. Serafina stared. She had expected it. She had feared it. But the cruel indifference with which he said it stole her breath. Elias, after 12 years. After 12 years? Please don't get sentimental. It's boring, he scoffed. Let's be adults. This marriage has been a business arrangement for years. A very, very good one for you. You came from nothing, Serafina. I made you a Vance. Now, I'm unmaking you. He tossed a thick envelope onto the coffee table. That's a divorce settlement. It's generous. $5 million. Tax-free. You keep your jewelry. The car you drive. In exchange, you sign the NDA. You don't contest, and you're out of this apartment by the end of the week. $5 million? She whispered. To him, it was pocket change. To him, she was pocket change. Be smart, Serafina, he said, loosening his shirt. Take the deal. I'm the future of Thorn Global. When my father dies, I'll be one of the richest men in New York. I'm offering $5 million. If you fight me, I'll drag you through the mud, and my lawyers will bury you. You'll walk away with only your good name, and frankly, who cares about that? He looked at her. He truly looked at her for the first time in months. His eyes were filled with nothing but cold, dismissive contempt. Anya is young. She's exciting. She's seen. You're just here. You're history. I'm tired of history, Serafina. Serafina stood up, her body trembling, but her voice was surprisingly steady. When do you want me gone? Elias blinked, surprised by her lack of hysteria. I'll have my assistant coordinate with you. I'll be staying at the St. Regis with Anya until you're gone. He paused at the door. Oh, and my father. Don't bother him with this. He's sick. I'll tell him myself when the time is right. You mean, you'll tell him after I'm gone and the papers are signed? She said in a dead voice. Like I said, Elias smiled, a thin reptilian grin. You're a smart girl. Don't mess it up. He left. The door clicked shut, the sound echoing in the vast, cold penthouse. Serafina was left alone. surrounded by tens of millions of dollars in art and property, and she felt the chilling, terrifying freedom of having absolutely nothing left to lose. Chapter 2. The Estate and the Will. The following days were a blur of calculated cruelty. Elias was thorough. The morning after he left, Serafina's elite credit card was declined at her local grocery store. The humiliation burned hotter than any anger. When she called the car service, she was politely informed her account had been suspended. Elias's sharp-tongued assistant, a young woman who clearly adored Anya, called to coordinate. Coordination consisted of being told movers would arrive Friday at 9 a.m. Serafina was to have her personal effects boxed. Anything left behind would be considered donated to the apartment. As Serafina sorted 12 years of her life, packing books and clothing, the gossip press exploded. Elias and Anya were suddenly the hottest couple in the city. There were photos of them dining at upscale restaurants. Anya draped in diamonds Serafina recognized, the necklace Elias had supposedly bought as an investment. There were photos of them boarding a private jet at Teterboro. Anya waving to the camera, her hand adorned with a huge new engagement ring. They weren't just dating, they were flaunting it. Serafina worked mechanically, her grief a cold, hard knot in her stomach. She found a modest, furnished one-bedroom apartment in a quieter part of Manhattan, a world away from the splendor of the Upper East Side. She sold a pair of her own diamond studs, purchased before Elias, to secure the rent and have cash. The only person she spoke to was Alexander. She called him the day after Elias left. "He's gone," she said simply, sitting on her bedroom floor, surrounded by boxes. There was a long silence on the other end, then a deep, rough sigh. "The fool," Alexander muttered. "The arrogant damn fool. Where are you, child?" "At the apartment packing. He's given me until Friday." "You will do no such thing," Alexander commanded. "You will come here, to the estate. Bring your things. You are not leaving this family. He is." "Alexander, I can't. It's his family home." "It is my home, Serafina. And you are more family to me right now than he is. Come here, now. I will send my car." An hour later, Alexander's black Bentley, driven by a chauffeur who had been with the family for 30 years, Javier, pulled up to the penthouse. Serafina walked out with 2 suitcases. She didn't look back. The Thorne estate in upstate New York was a different world. It was old-world elegance, warm wood, rich tapestries, and sprawling manicured gardens. It was a home, not a showroom. Alexander settled her into the guest wing, a beautiful suite of rooms overlooking a rose garden. Over the next 2 weeks, a strange, quiet routine formed. Serafina spent her days with Alexander. His health was fading fast. Doctors were frank, but his mind remained a steel trap. He had Helena bring the company's financial statements every day. "Look at this," he would mutter, pointing a trembling finger at a line item. "He's diverted another $20 million into marketing for her. It's a vanity project, Serafina. A $300 million vanity project. He's using the leverage of the commercial property fund." "Alexander, you have to stop him," Serafina urged, horrified. "I can't. Not directly. He's the CEO. The board is filled with his yes-men. If I fight him publicly, the stock will collapse. Thorne Global will be finished. I'll be the man who destroyed his own legacy out of spite." He coughed, a terrible rattling sound. "But there are other ways to fix things." He made her read. Not fiction, but market reports, SEC filings, and competitor analysis. He asked her questions, testing her understanding. "What would you do with the commercial real estate portfolio, Serafina? Liquidate the properties in declining markets? Consolidate debt and immediately stop the fashion line? It's a sunk cost," Serafina stated. A small spark of satisfaction lit up his fading eyes. Good. Meanwhile, Elias was furious. When he learned Serafina was staying at the estate, he stormed in, shoving past staff. Serafina found him shouting at his father, who was reclined in his study. "Are you taking her side?" Elias roared, his face congested. "She's a nobody. She's the woman I'm divorcing. She is the woman who has shown me more loyalty and respect in 12 years than you have in 40, Alexander thundered, his voice surprisingly strong. "She's the one who's been by my side while I'm dying, while you've been jet-setting with that model. I'm building the brand, something you wouldn't know about," Elias hissed. "You're an old man, anchored in the past. This company is mine. You're just clinging to the chair. Get out," Alexander whispered, his face pale with fury. "What? Get out of my house and don't come back until you're ready to beg forgiveness. To me, and to her." Elias stared, stunned. Then his face twisted into a mask of pure rage. "Fine, stay here and die with her. See what good it does you. I've already filed the papers. She gets her $5 million, and not a penny more. My lawyers will take care of it. You can't touch my inheritance, old man. It's all trust protected." He slammed the door so hard, a small picture on the wall rattled. Serafina rushed to Alexander's side, holding a glass of water to his lips. "He's right, you know," Alexander gasped, catching his breath. "The way the trusts are structured. He is the sole beneficiary of the voting stock. My hands are tied." Serafina felt a chill. "So he's won? He'll destroy everything." Alexander looked at her, his eyes unblinking. "He believes the trusts are unbreakable. He thinks my will is just a formality. He forgot one thing. The controlling stake, the real power, isn't in the family trust." "What do you mean?" "It's in my personal, private holding company, a small structure I set up 30 years ago. It holds 51%. 51% of the voting shares of Thorn Global International. Elias's trust only holds 20%. He thinks his 20% is the controlling stake. He never bothered to read the full corporate charter." Alexander smiled, a grim, skeletal expression. "He's a fool, Serafina. A magnificently pedigreed, expensive fool." He reached out for the phone. "Get Donovan Hayes on the line," he told his nurse. "Have him come to the house. We have work to do tonight." Alexander Thorne's final days were quiet, dignified, and filled with a surprising amount of work. Donovan Hayes, a silver-haired lawyer from a prestigious firm, became a fixture at the estate. He and Alexander, often with Serafina present as a witness and note-taker, spent hours poring over documents. Elias was nowhere to be seen. He was, according to the press, in Aspen with Anya, inspecting properties. He was spending his inheritance before he had it. He sent one text to the estate's main line. "Let me know when it's over." Serafina felt her pain over the man she had known for 12 years curdle into something cold and hard. Alexander's eyes were clear. "He is not my son," he said one afternoon, as Serafina adjusted his pillows. "Not anymore. A son doesn't wait for his father's death like a vulture. A son doesn't discard a wife like yesterday's trash." "Don't say that, Alexander," Serafina whispered, her eyes filling with tears. "He's just lost." "He is lost," Alexander agreed, with a dry rasp in his voice. "And he will never be found. But my company, my legacy doesn't have to be. You are strong, Serafina. Stronger than you know. You've just been living in a cage and forgot you had wings." He made her promise. "Promise me, Serafina. Don't let him ruin it. Protect it. For me. For the employees. For the future." "I promise you, Alexander," she said, holding his hand. "I will do my best." "Your best," he murmured, a rare, soft smile touching his lips. "Your best is better than his best day." The end came on a Tuesday morning, just as the sun rose, painting the sky in pinks and golds. It was quiet. Alexander looked out the window, took a breath, and was gone. Serafina was holding his hand. Serafina made the necessary calls. First the doctor, then the funeral home. And finally, Elias. He answered on the third ring. His voice was rough with sleep and annoyance. "What?" "Elias, it's Serafina. I'm at the estate. It's your father. He passed away. About 20 minutes ago." There was a long silence. Serafina heard a woman's voice in the background. "Who is it, darling? Tell them to call back later." "Fine," Elias said, his voice suddenly all business. "Okay, understood. I'll be on the next flight. Have Hayes schedule the will reading. Friday. And handle the funeral arrangements, will you? Make it appropriate. Dignified." He hung up. He didn't say thank you. He didn't ask how his father had died. He just gave orders. Handle it. Audience check. Do you think Elias's reaction proves Alexander was right to cut him out? Let us know in the comments. Chapter 3. The Euro of Shame. The funeral was exactly what Elias had ordered. Appropriate and dignified. It was also enormous. Half of New York's elite descended upon the small historic church. Elias, in an immaculate dark suit, stood at the front, accepting condolences. Anya was by his side, a massive black veil covering her face, her hand possessively on his arm. She looked, Serafina thought with a shiver, like she was playing the part of the grieving widow. Serafina sat in the second row with Helena and some of the Thorn global executives who had genuinely respected Alexander. She was composed, her grief private and real. She saw Elias look at her once, his eyes scanning her simple dress with a hint of surprise or annoyance that she was even there. After the burial, people returned to the estate for a somber reception. Elias was in his element, accepting condolences, looking every bit the new patriarch. "A terrible loss," he would say, shaking hands with a politician. "But my father prepared me. The company is in good hands. Thorn Global will continue his legacy." Anya, her veil now off, was speaking to an interior decorator about lightening the terribly dark decor of the estate. Serafina watched them from the library doorway. "It's disgusting," Helena hissed, appearing next to Serafina with a cup of tea. "She's already measuring curtains, and she's wearing the emeralds." Helena's eyes were venomous. The Thorn matriarch emeralds, the ones Alexander was holding on to for. Serafina looked. Sure enough, around Anya's neck was a legendary Colombian emerald necklace that had belonged to Elias's mother. "It doesn't matter, Helena," Serafina said, her voice tired. "It's all his now." "Don't be so sure," Helena said, with a small, odd smile. "Mr. Thorn was a very, very smart man. Friday. The reading is at 10 a.m. at Donovan Hayes' office. You'll be there, won't you?" "Hayes' office sent me a formal summons," Serafina said, confused. "I assumed it was a formality for the divorce settlement." "Just be there, dear," Helena said, patting her arm. "And wear something commanding." Friday morning was cold and bright. The law firm's offices in Midtown Manhattan were the epitome of quiet, terrifying power. Serafina arrived at 9:50 a.m. She wore a charcoal gray suit, her hair pulled back in a severe, professional bun. She looked less like a grieving ex-widow-to-be and more like a woman about to execute a hostile takeover. She was ushered into a large, intimidating conference room. Donovan Hayes was seated at the head of a marble table. Elias and Anya were already there. They were a stark contrast to the room's sobriety. Elias was in an impatient pinstripe suit, checking his phone. Anya was in a tight white dress that was wildly inappropriate, texting furiously. She looked bored. When Serafina walked in, Elias frowned. "What is she doing here? Hayes, I told you to just mail the settlement check." "Mrs. Thorn is here at my father's specific request, Elias," Hayes said, his voice like gravel. given she is a named party in his last will and testament. Please take a seat, Serafina. Serafina took a seat at the far end of the table, placing her briefcase beside her. Anya scoffed, whispering to Elias. A briefcase? How cute. Does she think this is a job interview? At exactly 10 o'clock, Hayes cleared his throat and put on his reading glasses. We are gathered for the reading of the last will and testament of Alexander Nathaniel Thorne. I will dispense with the preamble. Alexander was a direct man. He began reading. There were bequests to lifelong staff. Helena received a generous pension and a small house. The chauffeur received a lump sum. Several charities received significant donations. Elias tapped his fingers on the table, visibly annoyed by the delays. Get to the important part, Hayes. Very well, Hayes said, looking at Elias over his glasses. We come to the matter of the principal estate. I shall read Article 4, Section A, in its entirety. He cleared his throat. To my only son, Elias Robert Vance. Elias straightened, a predatory smile on his face. Anya dropped her phone, her eyes glittering. I leave him my entire collection of high-end timepieces, which he has always admired. Elias's smile faltered. He loved the watches, but I also leave him the sum of €1, paid from my personal checking account, with the hope that one day, through its possession, he may come to understand the value of both time and money. Two things he has so joyfully wasted. The silence in the room was absolute. Anya's mouth dropped open. Elias's face went from confused to white, to a deep, blotchy red. What? What is this? It's a joke, a sick old man's joke. Read the rest. The part about the company, the trusts. I am not finished, Elias, Hayes said, his voice cold. He turned the page. Article 5. All the rest, residue, and remainder of my estate, both real and personal, of whatever kind and wherever situated, including, but not limited to, my properties in Manhattan, Aspen, and the estate, my personal investment portfolios, my art collection, and most importantly, my 100% controlling interest in the Thorne Global Private Holding Corporation, which itself holds the 51% of the voting stock of Thorne Global International. Elias was breathing hard, his knuckles white on the table. Continue, he hissed. Hayes looked up, first at Elias, then at Anya, and finally his gaze settled on Serafina, at the end of the table. I leave it in its entirety to my beloved and loyal daughter-in-law, Serafina Catherine Thorne. If the previous silence was absolute, this was a void. Anya let out a small, strangled sound, like a dying bird. Elias shot out of his chair so violently, it crashed backward onto the thick rug. No, impossible! He was senile. She manipulated him. That sick old man, she poisoned him against me. He was in perfect mental health, Elias, Hayes said, placing a small digital recorder on the table. He affirmed his wishes on video, in the presence of myself, 2 partners, and a psychiatrist last week. He was lucid, specific, and categorical. I'll contest this! Elias screamed, his face a mask of primal rage. I'll sue you! I'll sue her! She's a gold-digging whore! I would advise against that, Hayes said softly, standing up. Alexander's will includes a no-contest clause. The moment you file suit, you forfeit the watch collection. And as for your accusations, be careful. Serafina is now, to all intents and purposes, your boss, and also the wealthiest woman in New York. Anya looked at Elias, her face a mask of pure, unadulterated horror. The man she had linked herself to, the man who was her ticket to billions, was nothing. He had a watch collection and €1. Elias, fix this, Anya whispered, her voice trembling. Elias pointed a shaking finger at Serafina, who hadn't moved. She simply sat there, watching him, her expression unreadable. "You!" he spat. "You did this!" "No, Elias," Serafina said finally, her voice clear and strong, cutting through his rage. "You did this. You and your lies and your ego." Alexander merely observed it. She looked at Hayes. "Donovan, please schedule an emergency board meeting for Monday morning, 9 a.m. As the new majority shareholder, I will preside. And please have security escort Mr. Vance off my father-in-law's properties. He is no longer welcome." Serafina stood up, her heels clicking decisively on the marble floor, leaving behind the smoking ruins of Elias's life. CTAs. If you think this was the ultimate revenge, hit the like button. What did you think of the €1 inheritance? Let us know in the comments. Chapter 4. The Iron Lady. The headline in the Wall Street Journal on Monday morning was brutal. Earthquake at Thorn Global. Scorned wife inherits billion-dollar empire. Son left with watches. The stock dropped 15% at the opening bell. The vultures were circling. Serafina, however, was not the quiet mouse the press or Elias had painted. She spent the entire weekend locked in the estate library with Helena, 3 forensic accountants, and a pot of black coffee. What she found was far worse than she had imagined. Elias was not just incompetent, he was reckless to the point of criminality. Anya by Vance was not just a $300 million loss. It was a black hole of shell corporations, payments to non-existent consultants, Anya's friends, and leveraged assets. The Thorn Aviation Division was 2 private jets leased in the company name, used almost exclusively for Elias and Anya's personal trips to Miami. The company wasn't just bleeding, it was on life support. Alexander had known it was bad, but Elias had hidden the true extent of the debt from everyone. Thorn Global was 3 weeks away from defaulting on a $500 million loan, at which point the banks would seize the company's core assets. And it would all be over. At 9 a.m., Serafina walked into the boardroom. The atmosphere was glacial. The men Elias had appointed, or who were her father-in-law's skeptical old contemporaries, stared at her as if she were a ghost. "Good morning, gentlemen," Serafina said, taking the seat at the head of the table. Alexander's seat. "I am Serafina Thorn, and as of Friday, I am the majority shareholder and the new chairwoman of Thorn Global." A corpulent man named Mr. Harrington, the COO and Elias's chief crony, cleared his throat. "Mrs. Thorn, with all due respect, this is a complex global corporation. It is not a garden party. The market is in free fall. Investors are terrified. We need a leader, not a substitute." Serafina looked at him, her gaze unwavering. "You're right, Mr. Harrington. We need a leader. Therefore, as my first act, I am accepting your resignation, effective immediately." Harrington sputtered. "You can't do that." "I can," Serafina said, sliding a folder across the table. "That is a full audit of the Thorn Aviation project, which you personally authorized. It details $28 million in unapproved expenses, including the purchase of 18 solid gold faucets for the jet Anya was designing. Security will escort you out." The other men stared, stunned into silence. "Now," Serafina said, addressing the rest of the board, "let's discuss the $500 million loan default we are facing, the one Mr. Harrington and Mr. Vance failed to include in the quarterly projections." For the next 3 hours, Serafina never raised her voice. She didn't bluster. She gutted them with data. She cited SEC filings, debt ratios, and cash burn rates from memory. In 2 days, she had absorbed more about the true state of the company than the board had in 2 years. "We liquidate Anya by Vance and Thorn Aviation by the end of the day," she announced. "We sell the Aspen property and the Manhattan penthouse. We ground the jets. We fire every marketing team Elias hired. We return to basics. commercial real estate, and sustainable investments. The two areas your previous CEO fatally ignored. When she finished, the room was silent. She had earned their terrified, grudging respect. Meanwhile, Elias's world was imploding. He had been locked out of the penthouse. His corporate credit cards were canceled. When he tried to storm the Thorn Global building, the security guards, the same men who had bowed to him a week earlier, politely but firmly denied him entry. He and Anya were holed up in his small, modern rental apartment, a tiny box compared to what they were used to. The creditor calls had already begun. "Elias, you have to do something!" Anya shrieked, throwing a designer cushion at his head. "She's seizing my clothing line. They are my designs." "They are not your designs, Anya. You hired someone to make them," Elias yelled back, pouring himself a large glass of the last single malt whiskey he'd grabbed from the penthouse. "Don't you understand? She has everything. The money, the company. It's all hers. But the divorce. You said you were divorcing her. She gets half your stuff, right?" Elias let out a hollow, terrifying laugh. "Half? Half of what, Anya? I have nothing. I left her. The divorce isn't finalized. She's the one with the assets. I'm the one entitled to half her fortune. But she filed first. Adultery. With you." The color drained from Anya's face as the reality hit her. She wasn't the wife. She wasn't even the ex-wife. She was the mistress, the one who gets nothing. "So I get nothing?" she whispered. "All this for nothing?" "We get nothing!" Elias roared. "That mouse! She took everything!" Anya looked at him. Truly looked. He wasn't the powerful, handsome magnate she'd seduced. He was a red-faced, desperate, ruined man. He was a loser. "I need air," she said, grabbing her designer handbag. "Where are you going?" Elias demanded, new panic in his voice. "Out!" She walked out of the apartment. She passed the doorman and got into a waiting Uber. She didn't look back. An hour later, she was on the phone with a gossip reporter, negotiating the price of her exclusive. I was scammed by the disinherited Vance. The end of a golden boy. Chapter 5. The Investor and the Beggar. The next 6 months were a brutal, steady ascent. Serafina Thorn worked 18-hour days, fueled by black coffee and a cold, burning determination to honor her promise to Alexander. She lived at the upstate estate, sleeping in the guest suite, her war room filled with whiteboards and financial printouts. She was relentless. She slashed the bloated executive payroll. She sold the vanity assets, the jets, the art Elias had bought, the luxury car fleet, at fire sale prices. It was just enough to stop the bleeding. But it wasn't enough to save the company. The $500 million loan still loomed. The investment bankers, who had been personally courted and then ignored by Elias, smelled blood. They wanted to be paid in full, or they would initiate foreclosure. Serafina called a meeting. Not in her boardroom, but in theirs. She walked alone into the investment bank headquarters on Park Avenue, carrying her briefcase. She was ushered into a room with 4 managing directors, all looking at her with polite, predatory smiles. "Mrs. Thorn," the lead banker, a man named Mr. Sinclair, began. "We're glad you've come to discuss the terms of your default." "I am not here to discuss the default, Mr. Sinclair," Serafina said, opening her briefcase and handing a thin folder to each of them. "I am here to offer you a new deal." Mr. Sinclair chuckled, opening the folder. "A new deal? With what collateral? Your ex-husband leveraged everything." "Not everything," Serafina said. "He only focused on the glamorous assets. He ignored the industrial real estate portfolio my father-in-law acquired in the 90s. Warehouses in what are now prime logistics hubs, sites for data centers. He thought they were boring." Mr. Sinclair's smile faded as he turned the page. The valuations were new and stunning. The now boring portfolio was worth 3 times what was on the books. "This is impressive, but it's illiquid. It doesn't solve your immediate cash flow problem. Turn to page 5, Serafina said. That is my restructuring plan. I am not asking you to forgive the loan. I am asking you for a 6-month extension and another $200 million in operating capital. You are asking us for more money, Mr. Sinclair choked out. Yes. Because, as you can see on page 6, you are already exposed on this loan for $500 million. If Thorn Global files for bankruptcy, which I will do this afternoon if you refuse, your creditor committee will receive 10 cents on the dollar. You will be responsible for one of the largest losses in your bank's history. Or you can give me the $200 million, which I will use to develop 2 of these data center sites, which I have already pre-leased to Amazon and Google. My projections, which are conservative, show you will be paid in full, with interest, within 9 months. The men stared at her. This was not the quiet, rejected wife. This was Alexander Thorn, reborn in a tailored suit. You're giving us one option, Mr. Sinclair said slowly, between a guaranteed, catastrophic loss and a high-risk gamble. It is not a gamble, Serafina said, rising to her feet. It is a certainty. Elias was a gambler. I am an investor. You have 1 hour to decide. She got the loan. While Serafina was saving the empire, Elias was hitting rock bottom. Anya's exclusive interview had been devastating, painting him as an arrogant, incompetent fool who was also terrible in bed. He was a social pariah. He had lost the legal challenge to the will. The video testimony was undeniable. He had been forced to sell his watch collection, one by one, to pay his legal fees. He lived in a small, rented walk-up apartment in a run-down outer borough of NYC, a place he used to mock. He was ruined. He had tried to get a job, but his name was toxic. No one in finance would touch him. He was Elias Vance, the man who lost everything. His rage had turned into pathetic, desperate self-pity. He spent his days drinking cheap vodka and watching financial news, where he occasionally saw Serafina's face. She was the Iron Matriarch, the new Thorn CEO. She was saving the company. His company. The hatred he felt for her was the only thing keeping him alive. It was all her fault. A year later, the cover of Forbes magazine was not a tech billionaire, but Serafina Thorn. She was standing in the new lobby of the renovated Thorn Tower, a sleek, modern, sustainable building. The headline was simple: The New Thorn, like Serafina. She saved a $1 billion legacy by destroying it first. The article detailed her story: the ruthless cuts, the brilliant pivot into data centers and sustainable tech, the full repayment of the investment bank loan 4 months early. Thorn's stock wasn't just stable, it was at an all-time high. She hadn't just saved Alexander's legacy, she had surpassed it. Serafina was a different woman. Still quiet, still elegant. But she moved with an aura of absolute, unshakable authority. She was CEO and chairwoman, respected, and by many feared. One night, Serafina was leaving Thorn Tower, later than usual. She was discussing a new acquisition in Lisbon with her CFO. As she crossed the revolving doors toward her waiting car, a figure lurked out of the shadows. He was thin, gaunt, and his suit, one of the last good ones he owned, was wrinkled and stained. His face was blotchy, his eyes bloodshot. "Serafina!" His voice was a raw croak. Serafina stopped. Her security detail, 2 new men she had hired, moved to intercept him. But she raised a hand. "Elias," she said, her voice even, betraying no emotion. "Serafina, I'm sorry," he stammered. He looked pathetic, a ghost of the arrogant man who had dismissed her in his penthouse. "I was a fool. I was blind. That woman, Anya, she twisted me. My father, his illness. I wasn't thinking straight." Serafina simply looked at him. She didn't speak. Please, Serafina, he pleaded, taking one step closer. The security guard placed a hand on his chest, stopping him. I'm ruined. I have nothing. I can't even get a job. All I'm asking for is a second chance. A job. Something. Anything. I'm still a Vance. I can help you. I know the business. No, Elias, Serafina said, her voice quiet, but devastatingly final. You don't. You never knew the business. You only knew the accessories. The cars, the women, the lunches. You never knew the work. The real work. But I'm your husband. We had 12 years. 12 years, Serafina repeated, nodding slowly. And in all that time, you never saw me. You never respected me. You didn't even know me. You thought I was the background, remember? You said you were tired of the background. She adjusted the cuff of her coat. What you don't understand, Elias, is that I'm not angry at you. Not anymore. I feel nothing. You simply don't matter. She walked past him. Wait, he shouted, his voice breaking. Please don't do this, I'm begging you. What am I supposed to do? Serafina stopped at the door of her luxury car. She looked back at a man drowning in the rainy, unforgiving reflection of the pavement. I don't know, Elias, she said, but you will figure it out. After all, you still have your watch collection. She got into the car. The door closed with a solid, expensive thud. As the car pulled away, Elias Vance was left alone on the sidewalk, shouting her name into the rain. A man who had everything and was left with exactly what he deserved. Nothing. Chapter 6. The Legacy and the Cold Charity. 6 months later. New York's harsh winter had given way to a bright, hopeful spring. The city, like Thorne Global, was in a period of renewal. Serafina Thorne had not just stabilized the company. She had turned it into a titan of innovation. Today, however, was not about profit margins or quarterly earnings. Serafina stood on the polished concrete floor of a vast, light-filled atrium in a working-class borough of the city. This was the Alexander Thorne Center for Innovation, a state-of-the-art campus she had personally funded, designed to provide high-level tech and business education to students from low-income communities. This was her answer to Elias's vanity projects. Where he had built monuments to himself, she was building a foundation for others, using Alexander's name not as a brand, but as a promise. Helena, now retired from Thorne Global and the full-time director of the Thorne Foundation, approached with a tablet. Serafina, the press is ready at the main stage. The mayor is in the green room, and the first cohort of students is arriving. We're ready when you are. Serafina smiled, a genuine, warm expression her board rarely saw. Thank you, Helena. How are the students? They're excited. They're terrified and thrilled, Helena said, her eyes shining. That young woman, Maria Sanchez, the one who wants to code for orbital mechanics, she's already cornered the head of our engineering division. I think she might have a job offer before the ceremony is over. Good, Serafina said. That's why we're here. She looked at the wall, where a simple, elegant inscription was carved into the white marble. The true value of a legacy is not in what you keep, but in what you build for others. Alexander Thorne. She felt a sense of peace. The grief for Alexander had finally softened from a sharp pain to a dull, warm ache. She had kept her promise. She had protected his legacy, and now she was growing it. She was about to walk toward the stage when a commotion near the entrance caught her attention. It wasn't the loud, angry sound of a protest, but a low, desperate pleading. She saw 2 of her new security guards, a polite but firm barrier, trying to usher a man back toward the street. I just need to speak to her, a voice croaked. She'll see me. I'm Elias. Serafina's blood ran cold. She motioned to her personal head of security, Mr. Stevens. It's all right. Let him through. Serafina, no, you shouldn't, Helena gasped. It's all right, Helena. Let him come. I want this to be over. The guard stepped aside, and the man stumbled into the clean, bright atrium. Serafina barely recognized him. This was not the gaunt man from the rainy street 6 months ago. This man was broken. He was skeletal. His skin had the grayish, parchment quality of long-term malnutrition and cheap alcohol. He wore dirty jeans and a stained sweatshirt, his feet in broken sneakers. His hair was long, matted, and streaked with gray, but the most frightening change was in his eyes. The cold, arrogant fire she had known for 12 years was gone. In its place was a hollow, desperate, slightly deranged vacancy. He was a ghost haunting a building he did not know. He approached her, blinking in the bright light, his gaze fixed on her. He reeked of unwashed clothing and vodka. "You look well, Serafina," Elias whispered. Her voice was not cold or angry. It was flat. The voice one uses for a stranger. "You shouldn't be here." "Shouldn't be. I saw it on the news, in a shop window," he stammered, vaguely pointing at the magnificent building. This is my father's. His name. You can't just—" "I can't just what, Elias? Honor him. Do something good with the money you tried to burn down." "It's my money." A flash of the old, petulant Elias hissed, shining in his dead eyes. "It's my name. You're spending my inheritance." "You had inheritance, Elias," Serafina said with patience, as if explaining a simple concept to a child. "You gave it away. You threw it out with the trash, the same way you threw me out." "No!" he cried, and his voice cracked, drawing the attention of arriving guests, who began to whisper. I made a mistake, a terrible mistake. I was sick. Anya, she manipulated me, but I'm better now. I can help." He lunged forward, grabbing her arm. "Serafina, please, I'm begging you. I have nothing. I sleep in a shelter, a soup kitchen. My name is worthless. No one will hire me. I'm Robert, just a day laborer. Please, I'll do anything. I'll be your assistant. I'll sweep the floors. Just don't let me die on the street, please." He was crying, his body shaking with sobs and withdrawal. He was a pathetic, broken creature, kneeling on the polished floor of the legacy he had abandoned. The press, smelling blood, began to move closer, cameras filming discreetly. Serafina looked down at the man at her feet, the man she had once loved, the man who had cruelly told her she was. The background. She felt nothing, not anger, not hatred, not even satisfaction. Only vast, empty pity. He wasn't a monster. He was merely an empty shell. She gently withdrew her hand from his arm. "Mr. Stevens," she said, her voice clear and audible in the now silent atrium. Her head of security was instantly at her side. "Mr. Vance is clearly unwell," Serafina said, her gaze steady, projecting calm and control. "Please take him to the catering tent and ensure he receives a hot meal and some coffee. Then, hand this to a driver." She scribbled on a small card from her pocket. It was the address of a high-end, long-term private care facility upstate. "Have the driver take him there. Tell the admissions director to bill my foundation. He is to be admitted for exhaustion." Elias looked up, his face a mask of confusion. A hospital? You're helping me." A desperate, ugly hope lit his face. Do you still love me?" Serafina looked at him, her expression finally, unchangeably final. "No, Elias, I don't love you. But my father-in-law was a good man. He wouldn't have let a dog starve, and neither will I. You are a liar loose end, and I am, if nothing else, meticulous." She turned to Stevens. "And Mr. Stevens, he is not to leave the premises. He is not to have access to a phone or the press. He is a private charity case, understood?" "Perfectly, Mrs. Thorne," Stevens said. He and another guard lifted Elias gently, but with undeniable force. "But, Serafina, wait! We can fix this," Elias stammered as he was carried away, his feet dragging. I'm sorry. His voice faded as he was ushered out a side door. The guests and press were silent, stunned. Serafina stood for a moment, the picture of composure. She smoothed the sleeve of her jacket. She turned to the crowd, her voice ringing out with clear, quiet authority. "My apologies for that interruption. My ex-husband is a very sick man, and we are ensuring he receives the care he needs. But he is a relic of the past. Today is about the future." She turned and walked to the podium, her back straight. She looked out at the faces of the students, the press, the city officials. She took a deep breath. Today, as the applause began, hesitant at first, then thunderous, she smiled. She was free. Conclusion and call to action. The meaningful end. What an incredible story of betrayal, justice, and the quiet, breathtaking power of being underestimated. Elias Vance made the mistake of his life. He thought the woman by his side was an accessory when she was the entire foundation. He traded loyalty for glamour, substance for flash, and he paid the ultimate price. Serafina didn't just inherit a fortune, she earned it by proving she was the only one worthy of Alexander's legacy. She sought no vengeance. She simply enforced justice and dignity where only vanity had existed. Her final act of charity was the ultimate test of her absolute power. She felt no hate, only the necessity of managing a bothersome threat. Audience interaction. What did you think of Elias's ultimate downfall? Was Serafina's final cold dismissal too harsh, or was it the only possible ending to ensure Alexander's legacy remained clean? Let us know your comment. We read each and every one. If this powerful saga of corporate redemption moved you, hit the like button and share this video to spread the word that the Iron Lady always wins. We'll see you in the next one. Epilogue. The Throne of Steel and the Warmth of Dawn. Welcome back. If you believe that finding new love after a cold-blooded revenge is the greatest reward, comment yes and hit like. This is the true conclusion for Serafina, the Iron Lady of Thorn Global. Chapter 7. The Unexpected Guest. 6 months after the opening ceremony of the Alexander Thorn Center for Innovation, Serafina Thorn was an undeniable force. She was no longer the inherited widow. She was the Steel Queen, who had consolidated the empire. Thorn Global stock was at an all-time high, and financial journalists predicted she would be one of the century's most influential CEOs. But success came with its own kind of loneliness. Her new penthouse, a much warmer residence than the previous Ego Museum, was often steeped in silence, punctuated only by conference call chimes and the rustle of documents. One late evening, as Serafina reviewed financial reports in her home office, the doorbell rang. She rarely had unannounced visitors. Through the security screen, she saw Javier, the chauffeur who had served the Thorn family for over 30 years and who had driven her away from Elias's cold penthouse. Javier was now retired and only worked part-time for the Alexander's Charitable Foundation. He stood there, out of uniform, looking nervous. Serafina opened the door. "Javier, is something wrong? Is there a problem with the foundation?" "No, madam," Javier said, his voice tight. "Everything is fine, but I have a guest." He stepped aside, revealing a man standing slightly in the shadow of the hallway. He wore a worn leather jacket, had thick brown hair, and a neat, rugged beard. He held an old baseball cap in his hands. "This is Daniel Vargas," Javier explained. "He is my son. He served in the Marine Corps for 15 years and just retired. He needs a job. He's been looking for private security work in New York, but..." Javier trailed off, his eyes pleading. Serafina looked at the man. He had deep, sharp brown eyes and a grounded, steady stance. He radiated quiet danger, exactly the type of protection a person like her needed. Javier, I don't hire security through. I know, madam, but he is the most honest man I know, and I think he might truly see you. Javier was intimately familiar with Serafina's story, knowing how Elias had made her feel invisible. Daniel stepped forward, politely but firmly moving Javier aside. He gave Serafina a straightforward look, no fawning, no fear. Good evening, Ms. Thorne. I apologize for the intrusion. My father has a history of bad judgment when he thinks someone is being treated unfairly. Serafina couldn't help but smile faintly. Mr. Vargas, are you asking for a job? Or are you challenging my security protocols? I'm offering to take them seriously, Daniel replied, meeting her gaze. I'm not cheap, but I am the best. And I work for loyalty, not for a paycheck. His words hit her like a silent promise. Loyalty. It was the only currency she truly respected, the quality Elias had thrown away. You're hired, Mr. Vargas, Serafina said decisively. Start tomorrow. You'll work with Stevens. I want a complete review of my personal security detail on my desk by noon. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Daniel nodded, and for the first time, a small, genuine smile touched his lips. Chapter 8. The Truth in the Silence. Daniel Vargas began his job, and the rhythm of Serafina's life changed subtly. He was efficient, professional, and utterly unobtrusive. He didn't hover. He anticipated. He wasn't loud. He was a silent, immovable presence in the background. He drove her in the Bentley, replacing Javier's semi-retirement. He sat outside the high-level board meetings. He observed everything. But what struck Serafina most was his silence. He never tried to impress her with business talk or ask about the €1 legacy. When she was working in the back seat, he simply drove, maintaining a quiet, respectful distance. One evening, they were stuck in heavy traffic after a grueling 16-hour session finalizing a major deal. Serafina, exhausted, sighed and leaned her head back against the leather seat. It never ends, does it, Daniel? She said quietly, more to herself than to him. The fighting, the acquisition, the proving. No, ma'am, Daniel replied, his voice low and steady, focused on the road. But the fight changes. You're not fighting for money anymore. You're fighting for the right to build something good. His simple, insightful comment struck her. How do you know that? I was paid to fight for 15 years, he said, after a brief pause. The first year, I thought I was fighting for the mission. The last 10, I realized I was fighting for the man next to me, for what we built together. It's the same thing, just a different uniform. Serafina looked at his profile, strong, focused, unwavering. He hadn't seen her as the formidable CEO. He had seen her as the partner, fighting to protect her creation. Mr. Thorne saw me as an asset, Serafina said, a shadow crossing her face. Something to be leveraged or discarded. Mr. Thorne was blind, Daniel said, finally glancing in the rearview mirror, his brown eyes meeting hers. You're not an asset, Ms. Thorne. You're the foundation. His words echoed Alexander's sentiments, the only people who truly saw her. Serafina felt a warmth bloom in her chest that had nothing to do with corporate success. Days later, Daniel surprised her by bringing a thermos to the car. Helena mentioned you haven't had a proper meal today, ma'am. I brought some vegetable soup, my mother's recipe. You need fuel to fight. He didn't hand it to her. He opened the thermos and placed the cup neatly on the console, a simple act of care that was worlds away from the cold, transactional nature of her former life. Serafina found herself opening up to him, slowly, tentatively. She talked about the Center for Innovation, her hopes for the students, the pride she felt in honoring Alexander's name. Daniel listened patiently, nodding occasionally, offering no judgment, only quiet support. Chapter 9. The Warmth of Dawn. One cold, wet Saturday morning, Serafina was driven to the Thorn estate to oversee the Foundation's final audit. Daniel waited outside while she worked. After hours of silence, she finally emerged, looking tired but content. As they drove back to Manhattan, the city was waking up. The traffic light. Serafina caught a reflection of herself in the glass. The Iron Lady, successful, secure, and lonely. "Mr. Vargas," Serafina said, turning to him in the back seat. "I have a question for you, but you don't have to answer." "I always answer you honestly, ma'am," Daniel replied, his voice steady. "Do you ever think about the future? Beyond the job?" Daniel paused, his eyes focused on the empty highway ahead. "My job is to secure your future, Ms. Thorne. That's what I focus on." "I know," Serafina insisted softly. "But your future, a home, a partner, you've earned it." He finally pulled the car over onto the shoulder of the road, in a quiet spot overlooking the Hudson River, where the sunrise was painting the sky in fiery oranges and soft pinks. He turned to face her, removing his cap. "I think about it," Daniel admitted, looking straight at it. His voice rougher now, stripped of formality. "I came back from 15 years of war. I don't need glamour. I don't need money. I need peace. I need honesty. I need someone who fights for the right things." He leaned forward slightly, his eyes holding hers. "I need someone who built something real from the rubble, not someone who runs from it. The problem, Ms. Thorne, is that you are the most powerful woman in this city, and I'm a security detail. That's a perimeter I don't cross without an explicit order." Serafina looked at the sunrise, the brilliant light washing over her face. She thought about Elias and his superficial betrayal. She thought about Alexander and his belief in her potential. She thought about the peace she felt sitting beside this man. "Then consider this an explicit order, Mr. Vargas," Serafina whispered, her voice a little shaky. "Drop the formality. Drop the perimeter. Drive me somewhere that isn't about Thorn Global today." Daniel didn't smile. He didn't speak. He simply reached out and took her hand, his calloused palm warm against hers. It was a silent promise of partnership, built not on contracts or wealth, but on respect and shared strength. He put his cap back on, turned the car around, and drove toward the rising sun, leaving the past and the noise of the city behind them. Serafina didn't look back. For the first time, she was moving toward a future that was truly her own, secured by the quiet, loyal heart of the man beside her. Conclusion. At CTA, Serafina has found peace and a true partner in Daniel, a man who saw her foundation, not her fortune. What do you think will be the biggest challenge for their relationship? Is Daniel too good to be true? Let us know your comments. If this story of quiet healing and deserved love moved you, hit like and share this video. We'll see you in the next saga.